Evio. Welcome back to The Devil's Ledger for the week of November 3rd, where we take a short stroll into the shadows, we peek behind the curtain of true crime and folklore, and occasionally we remind ourselves that New Jersey really shouldn't have that many haunted roads. But let's begin, as always, with the creepiest thing I heard this week. This is the Vanishing Hitchhiker of Route 66. So Thanksgiving is coming up, so let's go back to Thanksgiving night 1971. The air outside Tulsa, Oklahoma was cold enough to freeze the edges of your breath, and the last of the fog was beginning to roll in from the Arkansas River. A family of 4, the Millers, from Norman, Oklahoma, were driving home after a long holiday dinner. The kids were dozing off in the back seat, leftovers were stacked in those foil trays on the floor, and the radio was fading between Johnny Cash and static, depending on how close they were to the city. The mother later said that she saw the girl first, barefoot, standing on the shoulder of Old Route 66, just beyond the Sapulpa city limits. Her white dress was torn, one arm wrapped around her waist against the cold. The father slowed down instinctively. The man was raised not to leave someone stranded. He rolled the window down, and she said that she'd been in an accident, that her car had gone off the road near Rock Creek Bridge. She just needed to get home to her parents. It was a small farmhouse a few miles up the highway. She climbed quietly into the back seat. The mother wrapped her up in a blanket, and the girl kept her eyes down. She said her name was Mary Ellen. They drove maybe 10 minutes, the family asking gentle questions, nothing too personal. She told them she'd been coming home from her fiancé's Thanksgiving dinner. There'd been a storm, the car lost traction, everything went black. When they turned down the gravel driveway that she pointed out, there was a faint porch light flickering through the fog, but the house seemed empty. The father pulled over, the mother turned around to get the blanket back, but the back door was still locked. There wasn't any sound of the girl getting out. There was just the smell of wet wool and cold air. So they called the local sheriff from a diner half a mile down the road. Then they turned around and they went back to where they dropped the girl off, only this time there was no porch light, there wasn't even a house. There was just a collapsed foundation half swallowed by weeds. The next morning, the father, stubborn and old-fashioned, he went back. This time, he found a standing farmhouse about 100 yards up the road. So he knocked on the door. An older couple answered, and when he described the girl, the woman's eyes filled with tears. "That's our daughter, Mary Ellen," she said. "She died in a car wreck on Rock Creek Bridge 10 Thanksgivings ago." And local records confirmed it. Fatal crash in 1961, single vehicle accident. And every few years since, state troopers report calls from drivers claiming they picked up a barefoot girl in white on Thanksgiving night, always near Sapulpa, always asking for a ride home. Now, some say it's just a story told by truckers to keep each other awake on the long haul east. But others swear that they've seen her. So if you're ever on Route 66 after midnight and the fog begins to move like a tide, just slow down, because someone might still be waiting for a ride home. Now, I've heard that story a bunch of different times, but if you look in the records for Sapulpa and for Norman, Oklahoma, there's actually an account of a fatal accident in 1961 on Thanksgiving on Rock Creek Bridge. So that part of it at least is true. The rest of it, who knows? But there are a lot of reports on it. So I think that could be the origin of this Vanishing Hitchhiker story. So check it out. And happy Thanksgiving. All right, so let's talk about what's happening across the Evio creative universe this week. On The Devil Within, Season 1's re-release concluded last week, and this week we launch a new 2-part series on the chilling story of Sean Sellers. We're back in Oklahoma like the Phantom Hitchhiker. This is about the teenager who murdered his mother, his stepfather, and a convenience store clerk, later claiming demonic possession and satanic influence. So was he truly driven by dark forces, or did the satanic panic of the 1980s shape the story that we remember? It's 2 episodes, they're heavy, complicated, and exactly the kind of case that sticks with you. On the Ides of April this week, we close out our epic story of the assassination of Pope John VIII, the first recorded murder of a sitting pope. A true tale of treachery, paranoia, and power, where the church learned very brutally that divinity doesn't always protect against a hammer and a blade. On Taboo Treasures, Bruce and Jeff deliver an explosively fun and deeply cutting installment entitled Smartphones, Dumb People. They trace the evolution of communication, from the humble telephone to the bat phone, Get Smart's shoe phone, and finally to the glowing rectangles that now babysit the entire planet. It's witty, it's weird, and honestly uncomfortably true. The smarter the phones get, the dumber we seem to be. On Criminal Mischief, Carolyn Osorio returns with Fear, the jaw-tightening story of Byron Smith, the Minnesota homeowner who armed his basement, waited for intruders, and turned a break-in into an execution. A chilling examination of paranoia, power, and what happens when home defense crosses into homicide. This week in horror, we have 2 recommendations, and they couldn't be more different. First, we have the great Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein. It's a reimagining of Mary Shelley's masterpiece from the visionary director who gave us Pan's Labyrinth, The Shape of Water, and Nightmare Alley. Expect gothic beauty, grotesque tenderness, and that uncomfortable truth that monsters aren't born, they're built. Or sometimes they're grown in a lab and given, daddy issues. The other one on our slate is a documentary called Dorothea, the Portrait of a Granny Killer. And yeah, the title alone sells it for me. A documentary about Dorothea Puente, the sweet, grandmotherly landlady who allegedly turned her Sacramento boarding house into a cemetery and kept cashing her tenants' benefits checks long after they had, checked out. Because nothing says comfort home for seniors like a shovel in a suspicious garden. So I hope everyone had a fantastic Halloween, and if you're still eating candy corn, get some help. So please support the shows you love and get some great stuff in the process. Quince, luxury basics without the luxury markup. Go to quince.com/devilwithin for free shipping and 365-day returns. Mint Mobile, premium wireless for just $15 a month. Switch at mintmobile.com/devilwithin. ExpressVPN, privacy, security, anonymity. Get up to 4 months free at expressvpn.com/devilwithin. Mood, legal THC gummies and more delivered nationwide. 20% off your first order at mood.com/devilwithin. Ollie Dog Food, real food for real dogs. Get 60% off at ollie.com/ides. And Monarch, the modern personal finance app. 50% off your first year at monarch.com/ides. Listen to more from the Evio Creative Podcast Network. The Devil Within, The Devil's Ledger, Criminal Mischief, Taboo Treasures, and the Ides of April, with an expanded slate coming in 2026. You can follow us on social media at Evio Creative, at The Devil Within Pod, at The Ides of April Pod, at Taboo_Treasures. And as always, stay curious, stay skeptical, stay safe, and stay out of the woods at night. See you next week. The Devil Within is an Evio production, recorded live at Bel Air Studios in Los Angeles, California. For The Devil Within, I'm your host, Brandon Morgan.